How are you? Welcome to Critical Moves of Telesur. Why are they aiming now against the government of Andrés López Obrador? This is by Trump, with a threat that is declaring as terrorists those who are of the cartels of drug. What comes behind that? This is what we're going to be analyzing today. Let's begin. In a radio interview, the president of the U.S. spoke about calling the cartels of drugs as terrorist groups.
So I like the president very much.
I like the president very much. I get along with this president, and I think he's a good man. We offered to go in and clean, but up until now he has rejected this offer. He will have to do something. Up until now, he will have to do something. The designation is not that easy. He must go through a process, and we are in the process.
And you cannot tell.
Let's see what is the answer of the south of the border. This is what Manuel López Obrador said. We will not allow that armed people act in our territory. Foreign armed people cannot intervene in our territory. The government of Mexico will fulfill its responsibility of making justice. We do not accept any type of interference. We are a free and sovereign country. What the President of Mexico has said is in sync with the words of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, who said Mexico will never admit any type of interference to their sovereignty. We will act firmly. I have already sent this statement to the United States, as well as a resolution to confront the international delinquency. And let's update the information. The headline of this newspaper says, in communication with the U.S. government, we will make diplomacy to defend our sovereignty and our own decisions. We will overcome. I will keep you posted. But let's geolocate this high-tension place, which is the border between the U.S. and Mexico. And let's make a brief close-up on it. U.S.-Mexico frontier, tension zone. Located in the American continent, this border has a longitude of 3,185 square kilometers. It's a border that settles the political border. And it has on one side, it connects the Pacific Ocean, the Gulf of Mexico, and it begins with the Rio Bravo of Mexico and goes all the way through the Gulf to the Ciudad Juárez and El Paso, Texas. The south border is for the U.S. and north for the Mexico has deserts, mountains, and two important rivers, the Colorado and the Grand River. The U.S. States that are borders are California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. The Mexicans are Baja California, Sonora, Chihuahua, Coahuila, Nuevo León, y Tamaulipas. The border has the major number of illegal passings, with almost 12 million passages. Due to many motives, especially because of the conflicts, this border has been changing ever since the first pact of 1819, known as the Adams-Sonis Treaty. Between 1835 and 36, separatist movements began an independent war that used to belong to Coahuila. In 1845, the Republic of Texas became part of the United States of America. This fact, added to the expansionist movements of the United States, started a war with Mexico. The U.S. began the war in Veracruz and take over the capital, and they had to sign the peace treaty in 1848, by which the United States annexed various states, which is Baja California, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, and part of Wyoming. This way, Mexico had to give up 2 million of their square kilometers. This is like almost 55% of its territory in exchange to $15 million. Ever since, there were many pacts and there were many binational commissions to establish the borderline until 1970, when there was an agreement on the borders between the U.S. and Mexico. Let's see what the Patriot Act is about. It's important to bear this in mind for our posterior analysis. The U.S. Patriot Act is a norm of extraterritorial character, and it was approved almost unanimously, both by the Chamber and by the House of Representatives, and it was passed in 2001 by the then President George W. Bush after the September 11 attacks. The law, which slogan is to join and strengthen the USS of America, gives the tools that stop terrorists. This is obligatory when making business with the United States and members of the United Nations countries, along with other laws as U.S. Victory and the regulations of the National Security Agency. In total, there is a widespread law. The Patriot Act has 10 articles, that is in 132 pages, that have all of the precise tools to dissuade and punish any terrorist acts in the United States and in the rest of the planet. And it gives the U.S. prosecutor some rights to ask for military assistance from abroad. It allows to increase federal budgets for anti-terrorist attacks, and it broadens the jurisdiction of local state courts. There has been 2 updates ever since this law. First of it was in 2011 by President Obama when he extended 3 more pieces. This was to overhear phone calls, text messages, credit cards, Social Security, and information on people who could be independent terrorists. In 2015, a second modification was given to ask for many of the dispositions of Obama, and there was an instrument that you could not collect information over phone. The Patriot Act vulnerates the privacy, confidentiality of the information. The Inspector General of the U.S. Department of State showed the misuse of this, particularly in things that had nothing to do with terrorism. The law is still vigilant. Let's begin with seeing what the digital websites say. Hispan TV. Let's see. Plan of Trump is just a promise for his upcoming elections. I quote, Trump also wants to use this as an electoral campaign. This is a migratory topic, along with the wall that he used so much, and that he already used it too much in the first time. So this is an extra ingredient that will be the Mexican cartels, and they want to call them terrorist organizations. I close quotes. This is what Buenrostro said. BBC of London held an investigation called on how is the ant traffic of weapons from the U.S. to Mexico behind the violence in this country. This was of August 20th, 2019. Every day, there are cars that are loaded with hundreds of assault weapons, missiles that go all the way from Mexico to the United States. This says that almost 200,000 type of arms pass every day. This is 567 a day, 22 per hour. 70% of them come from U.S. armories and go to Mexican territory through the north boundary. The traffic is part of this wave of violence never seen before. According to the Secretary of Foreign Relations, near 70% of the assassinations in Mexico are done with assault weapons, and of these, the majority are American. In these frontier states, there are 22,600 armories and establishments that can sell weapons. Part of the problem begins there. So, closing up this article, it says the most common operation is the ant traffic, where hundreds of people buy one or several weapons, then are sold to people who traffic them to Mexico. These are people with no judicial antecedents, like being accused for a crime or mental instability. But there are places where this doesn't pass, this doesn't happen, and people who are legally unable to have these arms buy them. I take advantage to suggest that you read an article that's been published in telesur.com, and it's from Miguel Ángel Ferrer, and the title is The Lebaron and the New Punitive Expedition. It says the right wing of Mexico is trying to attack the López Obrador government, and in this effect, they're trying to go in the first line of attack would be the media attack that tries to satanize president and all of his actions. They're trying to ask for a military intervention of the U.S. as the only way to push out of the power López Obrador. This plan was in the hands of the Lebaron family, and they asked Donald Trump to send to Mexico police and Yankee soldiers, and with the only pretext to stop the people who killed 9 members of the Lebaron family. With this, President Trump began by saying that the cartel drug groups should be called as a terrorist. Let's not forget that doing this is the perfect pretext for the U.S. to interfere. This generated a great rejection in the Mexican people. Even the most conservative people said that this would be criminal, an anti-Mexican measure. Let's say that those who pushed forward this request went too far and decided to rectify faster than later. Because it's one thing to be called anti-Obrador, and the other is to be a traitor of your country. There is an element here that everything happens in the context of the first year of President Andrés López Obrador. Let's go to Mexico City with our correspondent Eduardo Martinez so he can update us. Good afternoon, Eduardo. Hi, Ray. It's a pleasure to be with you, and especially with this sensible topic in the bilateral relations between the U.S. and Mexico that has always been sort of shady, sort of clear. This thing of declaring the delinquent groups as terrorists could have very important implications in the U.S. and in the Mexican territory as well, especially because there are some sectors who have visibilized already some type of intervention, including military actions in Mexico. This is why there has been a struggle between the opinions. There is an ongoing discussion on what should be done in this respect. However, it's important to highlight the position of the Mexican government led by Andrés López Obrador, who has said that at any point could there be any intervention of any foreign country, much the least of the United States. They have said that there can be cooperation, but no interventionist. This has been strengthened by the Chancellery. The Foreign Affairs Department of Mexico will meet with U.S. authorities to talk about this. Where does this all come from? First, because of the U.S. declarations of the President of the U.S., who spoke about this possibility that the Mexican cartels could be considered as terrorists. But also, there's a specific situation that the Lebron family has requested that the cartels of Mexico be called terrorists. Let's not forget that the 9 members of the Lebron family were assassinated between Sonora and Chihuahua. They are border cities with the U.S. This made everybody very upset, especially this family. That is a very important Mormon family, and it has generated a lot of dispute because these families have demanded justice on one hand,
de gobierno del presidente Andrés Manuel López Obrador, y digo primer informe a un año de haber asumido el cargo. Ellos protagonizaron
and what they did was moved a mobilization.
Estaba realizando en el Zócalo capitalino. En ese sentido,
in this sense, they have been called out as traitors because they're requesting the U.S. government to apply some type of interventionist policy in Mexican territory. This is the situation. I know you're going to analyze it right now. And this is a very interesting topic that is still giving a lot to say. Thank you very much, Eduardo, for your report. Let's go to our first pause, and let's always remember that we have a question so you can participate. Do you think that Donald Trump is offering all this help without wanting something in return after that he wants to declare the cartels as a terrorist group, or might this be a facade for something else? Participate. We'll be right back.
Una travesía para descubrirnos. Buscamos conexiones perdidas.
No nos queda otra que luchar, porque no tenemos nada que perder.
Realmente es por todos.
Recorremos el mundo con Reportajes Telesur.
Let's see what has been the policy of President Trump in respect to the migrant influx from the Central American countries. This is an important context so we can analyze the rest. Ever since he took office, Donald Trump has applied a strong anti-migratory policy. On January 2017, he signed the decree of increasing a wall with the Mexican border. That day, the tenant of the White House said that the cost should be paid off by Mexico through the increasing the tariffs and taxes on Mexico. He also asked the Supreme Court of the U.S. to allow him to put an end to the DACA program, this initiative that was approved during the Barack Obama's presidency that protects the dreamers. These are the people who came to the United States being underage with their parents. They allow them to have education as well as giving them work permits because they're considered almost natural citizens of this country because they arrive the country when they're still children. The Trump administration has a double standard for the Central American countries. They punish commercially these countries. This makes people want to migrate, and however, they don't let them come in to the States. There have been several caravans from Central America going to the United States. 1,500 people from Honduras have tried to pass, but there has been an increase of police not to let them come in. This has generated strong criticism because they stigmatize the migrants even more. The governments of Honduras, Guatemala, and Salvador try to look good with the U.S. president, but Trump doesn't treat these people well. He says that he would rather receive people from Norway than Central Americans. Let's go to our first analysis from Mexico, Victoria Unzueta. She's a specialist in security topics. And from Spain, Dr. Carvajal, he's a specialist of the Ibero-America University and communication. Welcome, both of you, to our critical moves. Let's start with Dr. Victoria. You're an expert in security. How have you seen this last days movement of trying to call the drug cartels as terrorist groups that traditionally have operated in Mexico? And there's a question here. Why now? Good morning. I think that we have to see this internal context. Let's not forget that Trump is almost undergoing the impeachment process. So this is a way to make himself political propaganda, and also seeing ahead on the next year's elections. So I see that it's merely an interventionist action. I think it has a lot to do with the internal policy of the U.S., although we have to recognize that the violence, that the drug cartels has been increasing. And this has been the most violent year that Mexico has lived. So we cannot separate one thing from the other. And I think it's very important that we also analyze the U.S. context. Let's see the American context, the pre-electoral context, because any decision that Trump takes during this time also has an impact on the voting. So the question is, why now? Because for several years, the drug cartels have caused a lot of trouble. And apparently, ever since the policy of Felipe Calderón was a total failure. And yeah, it's true. I think we haven't seen that there has been no impact. The truth is that the only thing that the Mexican government has done in terms of fighting the violence is try to reconquer the territory under their control, and this increases the levels of violence. There has not been any specific reason, any change of policy in terms of what we've seen in the past 12 years. This would be already 13 years. And what we see is the violence has increased. And why now? I think it's because strategically now it's important. He can now thinking that he can be ousted out of office and not be reelected. He's trying to heighten any conflicts that were already sort of resolved. Another element we must bear in mind, and it is something that the Mexican government has betted on, is on this commercial treaty with the U.S. So I think that the negotiations that have been carried forth with the Mexican Chancellery with the U.S. Congress to approve the TEMEC, and these are two elements that we must observe carefully. Thank you, Doctor. Don't leave us. Let's talk with Ivan Iturre. Tell me, based on communication, how has this topic been focused? Well, the focus, the violence events that are having in Mexico had great impact in the U.S. This explains this calling of the U.S. to call these drug cartels as terrorists. There are many senators who had requested that previously. However, all of this added to the elections can boost Donald Trump to the next presidency. I would like to invite you. How do you think there would be how would the campaign be with this in mind? I think it would be very effective for Donald Trump to be able to use this scheme of interventions and operations in Mexico. This would be very useful for him. And I think that trying to what we see is that Trump is going to push this policy forward as an electoral tool, and that he can use it whenever he wants. It could be by detaining a drug dealer, and whenever he wants, he can freeze accounts. So I think that we have to look into this. I don't think that this would be useful for Mexico. Speaking of policies of communication, how has López Obrador answered? Well, López Obrador is doing what he has to do. He has to defend the sovereignty, and there's not much he can do. They're in a tough situation. They have not much to negotiate. I think that the decision of Donald Trump, he's not even going to bear in mind what the Mexicans want or think. Although there is a part of the Mexican opinion that they see with positive eyes that the U.S. can interfere in Mexico, this will not happen. This is the scenario that we can see.
Gracias, Iván. Manténgase
Thank
con
you,
nosotros.
Iván.
Regreso
Keep
con la
online. Let me
doctora.
go back to
Habiendo
Dr.
coincidido
Victoria.
tanto el doctor Iván con usted, doctora Victoria,
Having
en
so
esta
many
línea de
coincidences in
reflexión,
the same
le
line of,
pregunto, todo parece
reflection,
indicar
everything
que,
seems to
no
to
va
point
a vías de efecto.
that there will
El
no,
presidente Trump,
that this will
quiero
not
decir, no va a
happen,
concretar
that he will
esta
not be
propuesta
able to push
de,
forward this proposal
penetrar en
of
territorio
penetrating
territorio
Mexican
mexicano
territory
para presuntamente colaborar en la lucha
and
contra el terrorismo.
using
Se va a quedar en el
using
nivel
the
de las palabras,
pretext
quiero decir.
of combating drug.
Pues esperemos que sí.
Well, let's hope that
Yo creo
it
que,
doesn't
a
happen.
ver, el problema aquí es que,
I think that the
por
problem
ejemplo,
is
en el caso específico de la petición que hicieron los Levarón,
that
recordemos que ellos tienen una
particularly in the
doble
petition
nacionalidad,
of the
entonces ellos
Lebaron,
también
they
son
have
ciudadanos
double
norteamericanos.
nationality.
Y esto
They
le
are
da el
also U.S.
pretexto
citizens.
para
And this gives
realizar,
him the
estas
perfect
acciones
pretext to
en torno
carry
al
out
asunto
these
de
actions.
los cárteles como terroristas. Sin embargo, yo sí
However,
creo que
I
tenemos que
do
tomar en
think that we
consideración,
have to bear in mind
también el problema de la relación
the
comercial.
problem
Y
of
me
the
refiero a que,
commercial
no es-
relationship
no-
between
no
Mexico and the
podríamos
U.S.
observar
We could not
una
observe
nueva, digamos, tipo de relación
a
ya
new-
habiendo una
a new
intervención,
relationship with an intervention
de tipo armado.
of an
No,
armed
no estamos hablando, o sea,
intervention.
estamos hablando de un
We
nivel
are
mucho
speaking
más alto,
of a
porque,
higher level
de hecho, hay convenios de colaboración
because
entre
there
las
are
agencias de seguridad
cooperation
norteamericanas y las
cooperation
agencias de
agreements
seguridad,
of security
México, de tal
between
manera
the
que
two
incluso
entities of
operan,
security, both
y
U.S.
hacen,
and Mexico.
operativos y todo, participan de una manera muy activa,
And they participate
dentro de
very
la política
actively
de seguridad,
in the security
dentro de las acciones
policy.
de seguridad. Y me parece que
And I think
llevarlo a un nivel mucho
that
más
to
alto,
take it
como
to a
sería una
higher
intervención
level,
armada,
that would be
le
an intervention.
haría mucho más daño a los
This
Estados
would
Unidos
hurt the
de,
U.S.
en
much
términos de
more
la relación
in
política y
terms
comercial con
of
nuestro
the
país. Me parece
political
que no puede
relationship with
ser,
our country.
que
I
no
think
podemos,
that
que ellos no
we
estarían dispuestos a
they
dar
would
ese
not be
paso,
willing to
aunque sí
to
es
give that step,
evidentemente un amago
although
y una amenaza por
it's
parte del
just a
presidente
threat
Trump.
Sobre todo,
on
doctora, porque se le formaría un polvorín
on
a
behalf
Estados
of
Unidos
Donald
allí,
Trump. Well, especially because
prácticamente,
this
¿no?
would be
A
terrible
la
for the
entrada
United
de la
States,
casa, ¿no?
just at
Tal
the
cual.
entrance of their
Voy
house.
a referirme ahora
Let
al
me
doctor
refer to
Iván,
Dr.
con
Ivan
otra línea que
with
hemos
another
tratado un
line
poco
that
en el
we have
análisis,
tried
pero
to
tampoco
deal
es
with in the
menor, doctor
analysis.
Iván, porque varios analistas lo han
Several
tocado de alguna
analysts
u otra
have
manera. De hecho,
spoken
nuestra
of this,
recomendación
and
aparece
our
muy clara. La
recommendation is
doctora
very
tiene mucha
clear.
razón en que hay que
Dr.
tener en
Victoria is
cuenta, la
is right
arremetida
on saying
de
that
los,
we
grupos
have
del
to pay
narcotráfico
attention of
durante
the
los últimos años.
drug cartels
Eso
in
es
the
incuestionable.
past
Por otro
years.
lado,
This is
la profunda
undoubtable.
relación comercial
And
que
on the other
tradicionalmente ha
side,
mantenido México con Estados
the
Unidos. Pero hay un tercer elemento,
traditional
lo decía, y es el
commercial
hecho de
relationship
que
of
hoy por hoy
of
rige
Mexico
en
with the
México
U.S.
un gobierno de corte
And
progresista.
now
Un
we
gobierno
have to
que
understand
prácticamente le da
that
la espalda a
the
lo que
U.S.
venían,
has a
poniendo en práctica los anteriores ejecutivos, dígase Vicente Fox, Felipe
has
Calderón
a
y
different type of government,
el más
which is
reciente,
totally
¿no?
different
Enrique
from
Peña Nieto.
Fox, Enrique
Prácticamente
Peña
tuvo un
Nieto.
lapsus lingua y por acá. Pero bueno, me acordé a última hora. Entonces,
So,
dado que hoy
since
rige un
now
gobierno de corte progresista,
there is a
varios
progressive
expertos
government,
aventuran a
several
decir que
experts say
estaría en ciernes un golpe
that there
a
might
través
be a
de esta
coup
presunta intervención
through
militar
this
de Estados
alleged
Unidos sobre
military
pretexto de
interventions with the
apaciguar
pretext
o erradicar
of
a
calming
los grupos del
down and
narcotráfico. ¿Usted qué
eradicating these drug cartels.
Bueno, creo que sería ya una escalada mucho más extrema. Que
Well, I think this would be a very dramatic.
Esa posibilidad de que si el hecho de un intervencionismo a través
If
de
the fact
operaciones
of
militares financieras ya será algo escandaloso, pensar en
the
algo
fact
más,
that
sí lo
this,
veo muy
their
complicado.
intervention is
Creo que
terrible,
Donald
is
Trump,
scandalous.
a
I think
pesar
the
de
rest
que
would
a
be
veces
even
es muy
worse.
difícil de tratar de descubrir cuáles son sus propias estrategias.
Sometimes
Creo que lo que hace
it's
bien es
hard
oler-
to discover what
oler
the
muy bien el
intentions
miedo.
of
Y creo que puede oler el
Donald
miedo
Trump.
dentro del gobierno mexicano.
Now, it's
ante
important to see that there
esta
might
posible
be
amenaza.
fear
Creo que tal vez están viendo,
on the Mexican side with this possibility.
este intento o esta amenaza como un poder de negociación.
Maybe
para
they're
construir algo más
seeing it as a
estratégico.
negotiation
El hecho de que
tool.
de que sea un gobierno progresista,
However,
un gobierno de izquierda que esté,
regardless that this
en
is
México, no
a
le veo a Donald Trump un interés. Creo que el propio
a
López
left-wing
Obrador se ha
intention.
suavizado mucho
I don't think
en la
that
relación
Trump
con los Estados
will
Unidos,
go
ha suavizado
forward
mucho
with
su
this.
discurso en los últimos
He has
meses
softened
desde
a
que
lot,
tomó la presidencia.
all of his
Igual
statements
Donald
towards
Trump
Mexico.
tampoco, y
And
pudo haberlo
Trump
hecho en muchas ocasiones, pudiera haber entrado en confrontación
could have
con el
walked
gobierno de
in
López
and
Obrador.
confronted with the
No lo ha
López
hecho.
Obrador government, and he
Creo que en ese
hasn't.
sentido
So I
sí
think that
no
in this
veo
sense, I
algo
don't
más
think
allá.
there
Y
is going to
sería
be something
simplemente
further. I just think that
suficiente hacer operaciones militares
they're going
en
to do
México
military
sin considerar al
operations, and
gobierno
that's
mexicano
it.
lo suficientemente llamativo para utilizarlo en la campaña, que es donde yo le veo mayores
I think
posibilidades
this is
y donde Donald
what
Trump
he's going to
sí
do is
considera
trying
que
to
le
get some
funciona esa
points for the
narrativa
campaign.
dentro de sus votantes, y si le funciona en su esquema de polarización de la elección dentro de los votantes de Estados Unidos,
He
no
said that
dudo
once.
que le llegue a utilizar.
Doctor Iván, muchísimas
Thank you,
gracias por
Dr.
estas
Ivan,
explicaciones. También le
for your
agradezco muchísimo
explanations.
a la doctora Victoria que nos haya
Thank you,
acompañado
Dr. Victoria,
durante
for
estos
being
minutos de
with
análisis
us
en la
for
jugada
this
política.
analysis.
Hasta la próxima. Vamos
Till next
entonces a
time,
establecer
let's
otra pausa en
establish
nuestra
our
jugada.
second
Aprovecho
pause.
para invitarla a que participe en nuestra jugada estratégica.
I
La
invite
tenemos
you
en
to
pantalla nuevamente.
participate
¿Será
on our
desinteresada
Twitter.
la colaboración
It
que le
says,
ofrece Donald Trump a López Obrador
is the
para
United
luchar contra el
States
narcotráfico
doing
en
this
México, no sin
without
antes
expecting something
declarar
in
a los
return,
cárteles de la droga
not
como grupos
before
terroristas?
declaring
¿O será esta
the
una
cartels,
fachada
the
para
drug
algo más?
cartels as a terrorist group,
Opine,
or is this a
denos su
facade for
criterio.
something else?
Al regreso de
Give
la
us
pausa, voy a
your
estar dialogando
input.
con
At
el
the
invitado
at
oficial. Ya
the
se encuentra
when we
listo
come
para
back,
interactuar
we will
con
be
nosotros
talking with
también.
our next guest.
Vamos a ver de quién se trata.
We'll be right back.
The life is full of moments. Moments of fight. Moments of hope. Moments that transcend. Moments that you can live in. Telesur documentaries. Sundays. Only on Telesur.
¿Qué línea ha seguido el gobierno de
What are
Andrés
the
Manuel
lines
López
that
Obrador en la
Andrés
arena
López
internacional?
Obrador has followed
¿En qué
in
se ha
the
basado su
international
política exterior,
scope?
sobre todo
What
respecto
has
a
been
Estados Unidos?
the foreign
Revisemos.
policies in regards to the United States? Let's analyze this.
Transcurrido su primer año de
After the
gobierno,
first year
el
of his
presidente
government,
mexicano
President
Andrés
Andrés
Manuel
López Obrador
se ha caracterizado por mantener un
has
vínculo de
maintained a
cooperación
cooperation
y no de
ties
subordinación con
and
Estados
not
Unidos.
subordination with the
Ha
United
seguido la
States.
célebre
He has
doctrina Estrada,
followed the
impulsada por
Estrada
Genaro
doctrine
Estrada,
that
secretario de
was
Relaciones
pushed forward with
Exteriores
by
durante la
Genaro Estrada
presidencia de Pascual Ortiz Rubio en
during the
1930,
presidency of
que en
1930,
esencia plantea
that
una
in
postura
essence
anti-injerencista y de respeto a
establishes
las
an
decisiones soberanas de las
anti-interference and
naciones.
respect
La
of
doctrina
the
Estrada
of the
caracterizó
sovereign
a México a
decisions.
lo largo de su historia,
This
pasando por ciertos
policy
démones como las
was
gestiones de Vicente
was
Fox,
used
Felipe
by
Calderón
several
y
countries,
Enrique
by
Peña
several
Nieto, cuyos
presidencies
gobiernos
in
mantenían
Mexico,
una actitud
except for
sumisa a la
Calderón,
Casa Blanca.
Fox,
Desde que
and
asumió la
Enrique Peña
presidencia,
Nieto.
AMLO ha
Ever
retomado la
since
línea que hizo
AMLO
de su país un ejemplo
became
en materia
president, he has
diplomática.
maintained this
Esta
line.
línea explica las
This
posturas
line
de López
explains the
Obrador
postures
al
of
rechazar
Andrés
el
Manuel
bloqueo
López
a Cuba
Obrador
y el hostigamiento
while
a Venezuela
rejecting
por
the
parte de
positions of
Estados
the
Unidos.
U.S. against
El
Venezuela
mandatario
and
se
Cuba.
niega a
The
sumarse al
president
autodenominado
will
Grupo de
not
Lima,
be
al
part
tiempo
of
que
the
ofreció
Group
crear
of
el
Lima.
llamado Mecanismo de Montevideo
And
para
he
promover el
says
diálogo
that he
como única
prefers
vía
the
de llegar a una solución
mechanism
política
of
en el país
Montevideo as
bolivariano. La doctrina
the
Estrada
only
también es
way
coherente
to
con la
find a
decisión de
solution
otorgarle
for
asilo al
Venezuela.
presidente Evo Morales
He
y al
also gave an
vicepresidente
asylum
Álvaro
to
García Linera
the
tras
president,
el
vice
golpe de Estado en
president
Bolivia.
of Peru, of Bolivia, after the coup d'etat in that country.
Vamos entonces al segundo momento de
So
análisis
let's
en la jugada
go to the
crítica. Nos
next part of our
acompaña en esta
analysis.
ocasión
We are here
Rivas, como veíamos antes de la pausa,
Julio
periodista,
Rivas.
experto
He's
en
a
temas
journalist
internacionales.
and an
Bueno,
international
Julián, ante todo,
expert.
muy agradecido porque haya aceptado
Thank you
nuestra
very much,
invitación.
Julian, for
Y
accepting
ya
our
vemos entonces
invitation.
que este
And
anuncio
what we
hecho
see
días
that
atrás
this
por el presidente
announcement
Trump
on
se da
behalf
también
of
en un
President Trump,
contexto
it
donde
comes in a
México ha
context
desempeñado
where
un
Mexico
papel
has
significativo
had
durante
a
este
significant
último año de
role
gestión
in this
del
last
presidente
year of AMLO.
en la arena internacional, quiero decir.
Sí,
Yes,
en
well,
efecto,
in fact,
México es un país muy importante en América
Mexico is a
Latina.
very
No
important
lo está.
country in Latin America.
Algunos
Some say that we should start speaking of Iberoamerica to understand our identity, and Mexico with its president is trying to find solutions for all of the problems it has. Mexico is among the 12 most biggest economies of the U.S. However, the United States insists on dominating Mexico. Well, for 200 years, Mexico has been a victim of the United States. I think that the central problem of our policy is that we want to see immediate answers. The only thing that's immediate is the day, because the day comes after night and night after day. However, the Americans have always tried to siege and tried to change the identity of the Spanish descendant countries. This has happened from the English descendants. United States and the British pushed out the Spanish from North America after a campaign of defamation, using the seeds of Zionism ever since Cromwell in 1560, and they pushed a policy of stealing territory. The United States never accepted, well, the UK never accepted the Torrecilla Agreement. They never accepted the union of Portugal with Spain of 1560 to 1518. And at the same time, the United States is born as a nation in 1776. However, in 1574, George Washington is one of those who pushed forward the stealing of territory from France. But George Washington is considered a hero. However, he was an expansionist and he was a warrior of the UK. The United States, to become independent, there were 10 years. They had to isolate the British, and this battle was also fought by many Spanish and many Portuguese. The United States did not accept any type of the treaties that came. When the independence came in 1787, there was a second Paris Accord. In this one, the United States got more territory, and then there were also other processes. Particularly, the worst one was of 1817. When they thought that the U.S. and Mexico had a division in the parallel 45, and it was not there. It was further up. So what happened? It has been a policy of generating violence. This situation led that once that Mexico was declared independent, and then the U.S. starts a war and steals half of the territory from Mexico. This has led us to a situation where the offensive within the countries, the United States doesn't want any independent countries. And in the OAS, it's an administration it's just an administration on behalf of the United States. He is not a globalist, he's a nationalist. That man is an economist, but also he's an anthropologist, and that is where we can understand the anti-migratory policies. He's interested in controlling. Well, he thinks he's white. He believes in the hegemony and with an alliance with Canada, UK, Australia. And he believes in NATO, the submission of Europe, that the Europe have no relationship with China or Russia. This is a new war that has new war zones. Now it's not entirely important of having a good military fleet. This is why they're using the FBI. So the active role to destabilize countries such as Bolivia is part of the new policy of the United States. And they want to seduce militaries. So we're in a policy that the Latin American countries don't understand it because they have not studied enough of how the United States operates, which is to do away with all of the countries that are not exactly the same as the British system. Well, we have to do away with the mediocre governors that exist in Latin America. We have to advance to a better alliance with new economic actors. We cannot be tied because the United States has worked a lot in a lot of aspects. And our economy also depends on the National Reserve. It's not even good enough to try to leave the dollar currency. Why before the previous decades, the so-called democracies were subordinated to the United States by signing papers? So the possibilities that these countries are fully independent passes by another reality. Because we're not going to develop in any way if it has to do with being a subordinate of the U.S. They're trying to threaten us if we have other ways of integration, of changing the currency. We don't even have a railroad. We have just railroads that take you from one place to another. We don't have a solid economic system. We don't have anything. And this has been the policy of the Americans, passing by England, UK. And what they're trying to do is push out all of the small territories, all of the small populations. So we're in a situation where the drug trafficking is business. These drug cartels, why should we call them terrorist groups? Well, it's just an excuse. Because traditionally, it's coincidental that they're of Jewish descent. Let's not forget that the problem is who administers the drug. Because in Colombia, there's a lot.
de hoja de marihuana. Y son economías sumergidas. Porque ya la tiene controlada. Entonces, hay un intento de desestabilizar.
So there's an attempt to destabilize. There's a book of Robert Kaplan where they say that the problem of the drug cartel comes from 20 years ago. So we have a president that has decided not to break every rule. This man is not a globalist like the previous presidents, Obama and Clinton. This man, from the standpoint of the United States, he's racist, nationalist, and expansionist. There's an aspect that is very clear. Up until now, the international law has said that there's this international criminal law, International Criminal Court for genocide, war crimes,
y el delito de agresión.
and aggression.
Se ha planteado en muchos
It has
escenarios,
been
incluir el
said in
narcotráfico,
many
delito
scenarios
ambiental. Habría que ver si también la agresión
that there is
económica, el bloqueo, las sanciones, pudiera ser un delito internacional. Pero Estados Unidos,
this
con el
could be
presidente
a
Clinton,
crime, but the
aprobó,
U.S. with President
lo firmó,
Clinton approved
el Estatuto de Roma.
the
Pero
Rome
el último
Statue,
día del presidente Clinton
but
lo
the
hizo, luego
last
eso
day
fue
of the
rechazado.
Clinton
Entonces,
presidency.
Estados Unidos no está
So
en ningún
the
organismo
United
internacional
States is
que
in no
permita una
organism
política
that
combinar
allows
en materia de lucha contra el narcotráfico. Porque no le conviene, porque el sistema financiero norteamericano es el que más se beneficia del narcotráfico. Y la moneda casi oficial.
And the official currency.
Pero son leyes,
Estados Unidos es una ley
son
extraterritorial.
leyes unilaterales.
These are
No
unilateral
hay ningún
laws.
convenio internacional que
There's
permita
no international
confrontar el
covenant
narcotráfico
that
o
allows
definirlo o orientarlo, porque
to
hay países que están
define
viviendo el narcotráfico.
terrorism or
Cuando
drug
se
cartels.
están desarrollando grandes laboratorios para la medicina,
There are
para-
great laboratories
que
for
usan
medicine
componentes derivados de la cocaína,
that are using marijuana as cocaine as their basic elements.
para discutir estos problemas. Entonces,
Por el otro lado está la industria armamentística.
On
Se
the
ha
other
comprobado
hand,
que el
there's this
70%
war,
de las
this
armas
weapon,
que usan
the
en
weapon
México en el
industry.
fenómeno
It
del
is said
narcotráfico vienen de
that
Estados
most
Unidos.
of them,
Y algo peor,
most of the weapons
el
come
narcotráfico se mueve con dólares y
from
con
the
otras
U.S.
Entonces estamos hablando de un tema complejo.
We're speaking of a complex situation,
en la economía de Estados Unidos, y que este señor en el esfuerzo
and that
por
this man,
redefinir su
in
política
this
interna
effect,
y además de recomponer los grupos económicos
and
y
trying to
tratar de captar
improve
mercados,
their
porque
economy,
el problema no es nada más la moneda fiduciaria.
because the
El
problem
problema
is not
también
only
qué recursos cuentas para darle fortaleza a esa moneda.
what are the
Entonces, ahí es donde viene
resources
la
that he
intervención en
has.
Venezuela, en Bolivia, que es la desestabilización, y ahora con un nuevo aliado, Brasil,
And now with
que
a
fue
new
tomado por
ally.
agentes del sionismo internacional, que está claro que el presidente de Brasil es uno de ellos. Es una situación muy difícil la que está
This is
viviendo
a very
este tiempo,
hard
en el cual
situation,
no hay espacios para
where there
una
is
discusión
no
colectiva.
no way of an
Primero, fueron
improvement.
bloqueados. Segundo, los políticos
Well,
latinoamericanos no han
the
querido
Latin
abordar su
American
problema
politicians
existencial,
have
el problema
not
de quiénes
wanted
son.
to solve who are they from,
Si nosotros no
where do
conocemos
they
esos
come from,
políticos
where do they
latinoamericanos,
want to
sobre todo
go.
Quienes proceden de, o
If we're
quienes
speaking of
dirigen gobiernos
of
progresistas
these, of
proceden
who
del seno del pueblo.
who elect progressive governments are the people, from
Yo no le critico que se haya ido. El
from the
primero que
base.
renunció para evitar un derramamiento de sangre es un hombre que indiscutiblemente era además de
Look what
valiente.
happened in
Fue
Bolivia.
el presidente vitalicio
He
de
had
Bolivia, y
to
medio
he
de
had
entonces
to
fue
resign
sencillamente
to
que
avoid a
hemos querido
bloodshed.
hacer
This is
transformaciones
very
en un
good for him.
cuadro
But we have
institucional
wanted
que no
to
funciona,
make a
con un sistema
transformation
financiero donde
in a
los primeros
framework
enemigos son los banqueros internos.
where the first enemies are the banking
Creo
system.
que con movimientos
How
de
can we
masas y
stop
nuevas
it?
formas de democracias directas, mayoritarias, que obliguen
Well, I
a que
think that we
nosotros nos
need
encontremos como lo que
better
somos. Nosotros
democracies,
no
that
somos
we
lo que
recognize ourselves as what we are.
Porque por cierto sentido nos están llevando una guerra de religión también.
This is also a
Nos están
religious war.
metiendo
They are trying
por
to
todas las maneras posibles.
influence
Porque hemos tenido
us
direcciones de cultos que no han entendido el problema histórico. Hay un proceso
because there is
histórico.
a
Los
historical
no ven la
process.
política en términos de día y de año, la ven en términos de siglos, y su objetivo histórico es un
The
objetivo
It's incredible to see how the Americans see their history in terms of century. In Latin America, we don't.
Es una política de felonía desde Benjamin Franklin. Tenemos que cambiar hasta los modos de interpretar estos procesos.
We have
Seguimos creyendo
we
que
have
el
to
que
change
configuró
everything
esta
from the
política es
bottom.
Dios. No. Esta política la configuraron
This policy
John
comes
Quincy Adams y
from
padre
John
Leonardo.
Quincy Adams and John Adams
Una
that
política
based their
en primer
policy
término se dio de manera abierta con la transcontinentalidad.
on a
Hay un
transcontinental
pasaje que, por cierto,
policy.
Alejo Carpenter en el siglo de las luces, donde
There is a
Víctor Hugo
passage
dice,
from
que
Alejo Charpentier in
si
The
no
Century
fuera
of
por
Lights. He
los
said,
franceses y los
if it
españoles,
wasn't for
los
the
vascos
French and the
hubieran sido
Spanish, I would have
Cuando
been
se logra la
hanged.
independencia, a los pocos años ya Estados Unidos, cuando se da la Revolución Francesa,
Just a couple
no
of
quería
years
pagar
after the
deudas a Francia.
independence,
Se alía con
the
Inglaterra.
U.S.
Y
didn't
viene
want
la
to pay
famosa casi
France,
guerra entre Francia
and there was
y
a
Estados
war
Unidos.
between
Una guerra que para nosotros es significativa,
a war
porque
between
uno de los
France
grandes
and the
combatientes
UK.
es un padre de la independencia que no conocemos,
and
que es de nacido de Santa Lucía, Juan Bautista Vidó.
And
uno de
there
los
was
formadores del Ejército de Oriente
there
del
was
Defensor
even
Marítimo.
a hero from
Esas cosas
from
no
our
las
Latin
conocemos. Entonces,
American
quien no conoce esa
colonies
historia
But the thing is that if we don't know our history, it's not able to change their future. We are not American. They have changed our traditions. Now we consume our potato chips. We use their traditions. We are part of their culture now. And now all of their development goes around them. If we, as Latin America, have a sincere system for ourselves, a justice system, a defense system, everything that is ours, we should not have anything with NATO. There's what happened with NATO intervening Colombia. So we first have to recognize ourselves and what we are, who we are, and apply policies. I think that the president of Mexico has had a very interesting leadership, and now that they're a lighthouse for the rest of Latin America. And I don't think it's easy for Mexico. And it's very symbolic that when Mexico took office, they had an originary traditional event. Julián, thank you very much for coming to Telesur and giving us your reflections. Let's go to our conclusions. A true collaboration in the fight against the drug cartels? Or is this a coup d'etat that is underlying against AMLO, who is defending his sovereignty? And now they're even mad at him because they gave him asylum to the vice president of Bolivia. He also has a position against the U.S. in the Venezuela and the Cuban aspect. These media campaigns that are trying to delegitimize the progressive governments. So we cannot only be alert. It's important that we do it every day. This is all for today. Thank you very much.